Excellent. Well, it's nice to get to know where everyone is from and joining us. We may have additional people join, but I want to begin with some introductions so you know who's on the call. My name is Kristen Evans, and I work in Housing and Residence Life. This is my 13th fall with Grand Valley, all in housing. So I have experience in multiple aspects related to housing. So looking forward to answering any questions you have as we proceed.
Hi, my name is Deb Rambett. I'm the marketing director with Campus Dining.
Hi everyone, my name is Megan Ponke. I'm the registered dietitian with Campus Dining, so any sort of health and wellness questions, dietary needs, allergies, etc. I'm here available for that.
Hi everybody, my name is Liz Chase. I am the coordinator for parent and supporter orientation, and I'm delighted to be here with you this afternoon. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Before we begin, I did want to go through a couple of housekeeping items. First, I would like to note that I am recording this session, and this will be posted on our parent and supporter orientation website. I will put the link to that website in the chat box for you. So if you did want to go back and review this again, that's absolutely available to you. Next, we are going to be conducting this Q&A session under the assumption that you have already viewed our housing and dining video presentations. Really, this is an opportunity for you to ask questions based on the information that you heard in those videos. If you haven't viewed those videos, it's okay. We would highly recommend that you do so. Lots of great information in there. And again, that's available on our parent and supporter orientation website, and I will put the link to that as well in the chat box. So how today's going to run is Kristen and Deb are going to go through a couple of small PowerPoint slides, just highlighting a few key points in their areas. And then, like I said, we are going to open it up to the group for any questions that you have about housing and dining here at Grand Valley. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it back over to Kristen and Deb.
So we have close to 6,000 students who live in on-campus housing. The vast majority of our first-year students will live on campus, of course. They reside on what we refer to as the north side of campus. We do know, not just at Grand Valley, but statistically across the nation, students who live on campus do tend to do better academically, graduate on time. Some of that is also just the integration to campus, the convenience of being right there where recreation is and where food is, where faculty and other resources are. And so that rings true for Grand Valley as well. On a logistical level, housing assignments are in the works right now. So students are applying for housing, first-year students, through the 1st of June. And through that process, they select preferences for how they want to live, who they may want to live with if they have a roommate request, which we're happy to accommodate if they do, and then also what style. What we do with that information is we run it through our machine, so to speak, and then we select the housing assignment for the student based on those variety of factors, and that information gets distributed annually. It's typically about mid to late June, and it comes via email. That email will include the students, what type of housing they got, the specific building, their room number, and also the name and contact information for their assigned roommate. So that would be important information that I ask that probably parents and supporters would, I would encourage you to have your student forward that email when they get it. They're probably most interested in that roommate information, but we send a lot of other important things too. One of those pieces of information is what day your student will be assigned to check in, what happens if they have to arrive early or late. All of that information is included in the housing assignment. As I said, the housing application remains open, and students are still able to go back into that housing portal if they'd like to and update any preferences. So if they really thought they wanted suite style, and now they've thought about it some more and they said, no, I really think I want to be in cluster, or they've identified a roommate they want to live with, or perhaps they thought they wanted to live with someone and now they've decided they don't want to live with that person, we can accommodate all of those requests. They have access through June 1st in the system.
As Liz had noted, hopefully you've had an opportunity to look at the video. So here's just a couple of key reminders and things that we can talk about today if you have further questions. When students are using meal plans, there's two components to those plans. So there's meals, and then there's also dining dollars, and they can kind of use those at their discretion. For students who live on campus, on North Campus, they're automatically going to receive the 14 plus meal plan with their housing contract. There are a couple of opportunities to change if that's not the right plan for your student. That can be done online using a really quick online form. There is one plan that could be chosen for the same cost, and then there's an upgrade for an extra $150. Students who live on South Campus do not receive a meal plan with their housing contract. So there are 10 plan options available to them so that you can take a look at those and kind of choose what works best for your student. Some of the things to keep in mind are how much they might choose to cook for themselves and shop. If that's something they're really good at, then a lower level meal plan is great. If they're not interested in that kind of activity, then a larger meal plan makes sense. We can also spend some time today answering questions that you have about resources in campus dining. We do have information online for students who have special dietary concerns, also for students who are vegan or vegetarian. So there is a virtual tour of Fresh Food Company online that you can take a look if you want to see what some of our locations look like. And then, of course, Megan introduced herself earlier. So if you have questions about nutrition and resources available in that respect, you're welcome to ask those today. We always put in a little plug for jobs. We have a lot of need for student employees. So if your student is someone who wants a job on campus in the fall, we have very flexible schedules and some dining perks that come along with that. So that's a very quick overview of some of the things that you hopefully saw in the video. And if you need further explanation, we are ready to answer your questions.
So feel free to type in your questions in that chat box. I will read them out loud, and then Kristen or Deb or Megan will answer them. Okay, do students use more dining dollars or meal swipes?
It really depends. We have a lot of students who use meal swipes because when you're using meals, you can go to Fresh Food Company, which is all you care to eat, and that's a meal. Or you can also use a meal to purchase a combo at other restaurants around campus. Students who live on North Campus are right next to or very near Kleiner, and that's an area where students would use a meal to purchase a combo. So in that respect, they use a lot of meals. We find that most students like to use their meals first. That's the best way to get value out of your plan. And then they kind of reserve those dining dollars for things where meals are not provided. So places like Starbucks get a lot of dining dollar action. The convenience stores, a lot of people spend dining dollars there. So we find that students tend to use those meals first, which is wise. That is the best way to get value out of the plan.
All right, I have a housing question here. When do students apply for housing for next year? This person's hearing from other college parents that this is done freshman year before December break.
Yes, this is a great question. And Liz, cut me off if I get too verbose in my answer. There's a lot of pieces here. So that is true. So on the on-campus housing aspect in particular, we traditionally open that application right after Labor Day, which is really the same time that we open the freshman application as well. Okay, so right after Labor Day, we open that up. The $150 housing deposit that your student paid to live with us this year, that carries with them as long as they live with us. So when they were to apply for sophomore year, the one thing that would be different on the front end is that you wouldn't be paying that deposit again. But it's done through the same portal. So it's in My Banner, it's in the My Housing portal, you fill out the application. The other thing that's different about sophomore year versus the first year on campus is that this time around, the students give us their information and we make the assignments and we send an email out and say, this is what you got, right? This is where we assigned you. whereas students living with us for second, third, and fourth year have more autonomy in choosing their style. So it's a two-part process. They'll apply, which tells us, hey, I'm in the queue, I want to live with you. And then we actually put them in like a lottery system, and then they'll select what they want, and they can manipulate that all the way through March. So they may sign up for a 4-bedroom apartment in Laker Village in October, and then they meet somebody in class, and they really want to be their roommate next year. So then in December, they decide to go to Murray Living Center instead, and they match a roommate. And maybe those two people have a big fight, and then in February, they uncouple, and the person moves back to Laker Village. So the system begins as early as Labor Day, but they're able to manipulate their assignment all the way through and choose what they would like. The time frame that is done is less about when we believe that that's when students should be doing it, and honestly more to respond to the ferocious marketing of private landlords in the area. So what we tell families every year is the housing is a personal choice that you need to make for your family about where you want your student to live for a sophomore year. But we would really recommend treading lightly and doing a ton of research before you sign an off-campus lease. So what happens is those apartments will start to market to our students immediately as soon as they step foot on campus. And they do all of that so early that we really moved. It's been probably close to 10 years now. We used to do it more like in January and February, which is when students felt more comfortable making a choice. But unfortunately, we really have to speed ahead with that, which is why we maintain a flexibility. So they're filling out that application, but if they change their mind 8 times between September and May, we're gonna accommodate for that. On-campus housing is only for Grand Valley students. So that's another thing to keep in mind when contracting with a private landlord off the Grand Valley property. An individual who signs a lease is on the hook for that lease regardless of their student status. So for example, when coronavirus hit, we closed down our buildings. We gave the students their money back for time that they did not use, whereas students who had contracted with a private company are still paying those leases, even though Grand Valley classes went remote. So there's a lot to consider there.
Looks like we have a follow-up question. If roommates are
Yes.
matched for housing, is it likely they will end up together?
I would say there is about a 100% chance they'll end up together. There's a few caveats here. So we have to request each other. So Deb might want to be my roommate, and I may say like, no, Deb, I really don't want to live with you. And if I don't match with her, then our system will not look at it. So that is the one piece. And you said the word match, so it sounds like you kind of know how this goes. They need to be matched. The only other thing is that they do each answer a question that indicates which is more important to you, the style or the person. So the only times that roommate matches don't end up being granted is if one person wants apartment style and one person wants traditional style, and one of them says my style is more important than my person. Sometimes that gets messed up. But even if it did, we have 2 full-time and 1 part-time assignment coordinator that make and change housing assignments and roommate matches 5 days a week, all year long. So if an assignment came and you said, well, wait a minute, I really wanted Deb, and we called or emailed, and then they confirmed that, oh, it does match, they want to be together, you shoot us an email, and then on the back end, we will fix it. Now, that being said, I would say that our biggest recommendation related to roommates are that acquaintances make better roommates than friends. So what's been really great is there's been a growing trend of students kind of finding and vetting each other through social media. It does make us a bit nervous when friends room together for a couple reasons. One, you gamble with that friendship. So if it's a friendship that's important to you, which again is why I would not accept Deb's roommate request, because Deb and I have a great relationship and I wouldn't want to harm that by sharing a kitchen. So you do have to acknowledge that you're gambling with that friendship, but also the social network of the students expand, because Deb and I are going to be friends no matter what. So I'm going to live in my building and make friends. She's going to live in her building and make friends. And then we know that many more people. Whereas those that are acquaintances is nice because you know just enough about them that you feel like you've got a friend in common or you have a common interest. So you're not going in with no information, and that's been really helpful. So we don't dig into that, the why they match, but if I ask for you, you also ask for me, we're going to grant that.
Excellent. Looks like we have a dining question. So for students with dietary restrictions, so for students who maybe eat less, are there cheaper meal plans available?
The quick answer is yes. The full answer is typically when we have students with dietary restrictions, we like to have them spend a little time chatting with Megan, just to kind of talk about what their needs are. And then Megan does a great job, and I'm sorry I'm answering for you, Megan, but she does a great job of kind of talking students through what their choices are, what's currently available that might work for them. If we get into a situation after that consultation where the student just feels that there isn't enough, there are other options that we can look at. So that's kind of a one-on-one kind of basis. It really depends on the severity. If someone's struggling with allergies or other things. That's the short answer. Megan, do you have more to add, or does that sum it up?
I think that pretty much sums it up. I was going to mention too, it can depend on your housing style, where you're living. If you are able to change it, like if you're on South Campus, then it might not be as big of an issue, but if you're on North Campus, you might have to provide, if that was the case that you really did need a lower meal plan, you know, would kind of go more in the details with that one-on-one. You might have to provide more information with me, but that can be something we do one-on-one. So good question though.
All right, looks like we have another dining question. Do you have a lot of vegetarian options?
I'll take this one. We do have quite a lot of vegetarian options. On our website, we do have a vegan vegetarian guide that kind of goes over by location what options we have. A lot of it kind of lends itself to create your own, even at like places other than Fresh Food Company, which is the all you care to eat dining location. There's lots of options to substitute, you know, beans for meat or things like that. Same goes for vegan options. So it's really kind of like what you make it and being aware of all of your options on campus, because some students will go to the same place and never really branch out. So we try to encourage you. We have lots of different locations across campus to kind of explore and see what best suits your needs.
Great. How many total dining locations are there?
Between the Allendale campus and the Pew campus, which is in downtown Grand Rapids, we have 22 dining locations. So that includes both restaurants, coffee shops, convenience stores, and what am I forgetting? Oh, concessions.
Great. Looks like we have another housing question. With roommate matching, this particular person only did it with 2 this year. When they apply for sophomore year, is there an option to match 4 roommates?
Yes, that's a great question. Yep. And so then they go in as a group, and we have a lot of 4-person options, and I would say those go quickly because they're at a really comfortable price point. So you've got, I mean, and in most cases, each of those 4 individuals has their own bedroom. There will be in an apartment with 4 bedrooms, there'll be 2 bathrooms. So you're only sharing the bathroom with one other person. And then you have the full kitchen, the full living room. So the 4-person units go pretty quick. So I would definitely recommend to kind of be quick on that. And then it's set up really easily because when 4 people match, only one of the 4 have to go in and they bring everyone else with them. So you kind of have like a group leader, and I'm already matched with 3 people, and I select Murray room 202, and that pulls all 4 of us into room Murray 202, and then we're good to go there. Yes.
Okay, another housing question, Kristen. What if a student cannot make it on the assigned move-in date?
Great question. We do encounter this for a variety of reasons. So we do assign move-in dates based on building, and I will be very honest that we want to make sure that we are practicing appropriate social distancing, and so our model may look a little bit different for fall 20 than it typically does, but still what will remain is that students will know when they are assigned, what day they're assigned, and if applicable, what time they are assigned. And so we work very closely with the Grand Valley Police Department to direct traffic in a way that is appropriate. So the other thing about arriving on the day is, one, that we are most prepared on that day for that particular building, and that relates to support, signage, volunteers, doors being unlocked, all of that sort of thing. That night is also when your student would have their first floor meeting, where they would meet their resident assistant and learn about all the policies and procedures for living on campus. So by and large, we would really like students to arrive on that day. However, there are students who have different situations. We will get some early arrivals, and those students will work with their particular area. So for example, some may get a job at campus dining. And so then we get a list from Deb of which students need to arrive early so that they can be trained. So they would come on an earlier day, and we would accommodate for that. Students who are in band, students at athletics. So there's a variety of circumstances in which a student is participating in a program that requires them to arrive early. So some differences is that there just may not be some of the flow of traffic on those days. It's a little bit more self-service, where we tend to be pretty hands-on on the assigned move-in day. In terms of parent and family schedule, if you were assigned on Tuesday and you really couldn't do Tuesday, but you could do Monday or Wednesday, we have that option. And I would always encourage someone to come a day early versus a day late, especially because of the missing of that meeting. So there's kind of two different groups of people who arrive early. Some are connected to a program, others it's just a family circumstance. Some people with children in multiple colleges, they're moving in on the same day. One kid has to move in on time, one kid has to move in early or late. But again, I would always opt for the day before versus the day after if it's a scheduling conflict.
Okay, another housing question. As an upperclassman, if you had to live on the Pew campus, would you suggest to live on campus or off campus?
So that's a great question about the Pew campus. So what you probably know about Grand Valley is that our professional programs are for the most part located on the Pew campus. So a lot of first year students even will have at least one class downtown. I would encourage that. I think for some students, unless they have to go downtown, they don't make it down there, and it's beautiful. I mean, Grand Rapids is an amazing place. But even when students get into, let's say, the nursing program or engineering, any of those programs where all their classes are downtown, they still make a choice for themselves about living. So that doesn't necessarily mean they'll move downtown. Some will, and some could be on or off campus, but because the majority of student life is in Allendale, some students will opt to continue living in Allendale and go downtown for every class because they play intramural sports, which are on the Allendale campus, or they have a campus job on the Allendale campus. They're in Greek life and they want to live in their Greek house, which is in Allendale, right? So just having all your classes downtown doesn't necessarily mean that you'll live downtown. Perhaps they will. For me, my kids are still, luckily, well, my daughter just reminded me that in 6 years she'll be 16. And I was like, I don't need to be reminded of that. It's going very quickly. But I sometimes think about that, and I feel like what to me is a perfect Grand Valley kind of plan would be to be on that North Campus freshman year, to be on the South Campus in Allendale sophomore year, go to on-campus housing downtown junior year, and then maybe do something, a house or whatnot. I will say that we do have, it's a different kind of off-campus living environment downtown than it is in Allendale. So students who don't live on campus in Allendale, they just live in apartments. That's what options are for them. Whereas in Grand Rapids proper, they may be in apartments, or they may be in like an old rental house, a bunch of students living together. I don't get too involved in that. The thought of living with 6 other 22-year-olds and having to mow my own lawn just doesn't interest me in particular. But there are students who will do that as well. And what's interesting is there is a handful of students that will opt to stop somewhere in the middle. So right in between is like I don't know if you call it a village or city or town of Walker and Standale, which is directly between Allendale and Grand Rapids. And that's where that 50 bus line goes back and forth. It's where our Meyer is. And so some students by their junior or senior year, they decide to split the difference if half of their stuff's in Allendale and half of their stuff is in Grand Rapids. So really your options open up quite a bit when you get down that road, and you got to decide what works best for you.
Excellent. So we have a dining question. How do we make changes to a meal plan if the student wanted to upgrade?
Okay, so beginning on Monday, June 8th, there will be a very short form on our homepage, which is gvsufood.com. And if you look across the navigation on top, underneath meal plans at the bottom, it will say meal plan change form. So your student will log in using their Grand Valley credentials, and then it's really just a matter of checking 2 boxes and then it's done. So that'll be available beginning June 8th.
Any other questions? All right. How do you check your dining dollar amounts?
There's a couple of different ways you can check dining dollars. You can register online at gvsufood.com, and then you'll be able to go in and watch the balance of meals and dining dollars. Students can choose to link their parents in if they want to allow their parents to see their usage, or students can also check using the GV mobile app. The third method would be to ask for a receipt at time of purchase, and then the balance is printed at the bottom. Just so you know, we don't typically give receipts because it slows the line down, but students are welcome to ask at any time.
Okay. Do they pick up a meal plan card the day they move in?
No, your student does not need to pick up a meal card the day they move in. So the great thing about meal plans is the meal plans are activated the first day of move-in. So regardless of whether your student moves in the first day of move-in week or the third day of move-in week, their plan is active and ready for use the day that they move in. And the plan is accessed by the barcode on the back of your student's ID. So there's no need to come to the campus dining office at all.
So do meal swipes roll over to the next week?
That depends what kind of plan you have. Most new students are going to live on North Campus and have that 14 plus plan. Any of the weekly plans, meals reset each week, and that happens Saturday night at midnight. And every day, students have an opportunity to use up to 4 meals. So that gives you 28 opportunities throughout the week before those meals reset on Saturday night. If you are on South Campus and your student has a semester plan, which would be the value or casual plus plans, then that's just a chunk of meals that they use throughout the semester.
Okay, since no in-person orientation, how or when do freshmen get the student IDs? I'm not sure if either of you are aware of what we're doing with student IDs. I believe there has been some discussion about mailing out IDs, but we will definitely be in communication with students about how they can go about getting their IDs so they can eat. Good question, though.
The student ID actually also functions as the swipe access for many of our residential areas too. So in some areas, the students are going to carry their student ID and then get a separate plastic access card. But each year we're kind of making strides to combine that. So for some students, that card is not only, you know, the library card and getting on the bus and the food, but it's also how they get into their assigned building. And looks like our next question is in relationship to that. Students lose things, it happens. And then sometimes not even lost, they get locked out. So in our newer buildings in particular, the doors not only do they automatically shut behind a person, but they automatically lock as well. So in some of our older buildings, when students leave, they need to turn the key to lock the door, like when they go to class. But in the newer buildings, when that door closes, it also locks. And so we often have students that will not lose their credentials, but they'll just get, they'll get locked out. So each area is connected to a residential service desk. If the desk is closed, it's only closed in times where an RA is on duty. So then, the students make that call and say, hey, I'm locked out or I lost my key. Depending on the situation, if it's just a lockout, we let them in and then they grab their key. If it's lost, then we will do a replacement order. We'll give them a spare credential. and then we'll put in an order. That order ends up being at the student's expense. And I will tell you, for brass keys especially, it can get pretty expensive. So it's important that students have a good plan of a lanyard or whatever it is that they're carrying their credentials around.
Okay, so what do students do after they move in? Do they stay on campus or come home before classes start?
Yes, no, so once they're here, they're here. So we're happy to welcome them. So for students that, you know, in a general practice, students who arrive on Monday, transitions orientation begins Wednesday night. But then during the day on Tuesday and during the day on Wednesday, there are different opportunities for them to participate in. And some of that is generally getting accustomed to campus. So there's a lot of trips to the Laker store to get the books, checking out the different dining facilities, hopping on the Rapid, right, and getting a test run, especially if a student has a class that is scheduled for downtown. They may want to do that before their first day of class, make sure they know when to get on the bus, how to get off the bus, and all of that. Campus tours and social events and things of that nature. So once they arrive, they are with us. We really encourage students to stay, particularly during that Labor Day weekend. It's an easy time for students to go home, but that makes it a little bit harder to make that connection to campus. And so we would invite families, if they wanted to come back and enjoy the beauty of West Michigan during Labor Day weekend versus their students going home, we would recommend that.
Okay, question about those keys again. Are the room doors all locked by brass keys or are some locked by the IDs?
So you're going to get into a room door either with a brass key or an access card, which may or may not be the ID. For the most part, for first year students, they're using a brass key and their student ID are the two pieces. The newer buildings, so the apartments on the south end of campus, so for sophomore year, you're more likely to swipe in. Either way, any student will have a brass key because you need a brass key for the mailbox. So for example, if you get assigned to a suite style building, Kirkpatrick, let's say, you're gonna use your ID to swipe into just the building, right? Because only students that live in that building can get in. And then to get your mail or to get into your room, you're gonna use a key.
Okay, what options do you have for a dairy substitution?
So it kind of depends on the location. For example, at Fresh Food Company, we have a vegan station, so of course there's no dairy there. We have an allergen station called My Fresh Pantry that houses a lot of specialty items, not just dairy substitutions, but also things that are made without gluten, egg, etc. And then also most of our locations, and especially the coffee shops, will have substitutes for milk, so almond and soy milk. And we do have an allergen guide on our website as well. It should be right next to the vegan vegetarian guide. And that kind of goes through by location, some of the options that we have. And it's really just kind of, again, a lot of these things are create your own. So if you want something made without dairy, then we can, make it for you that way. If you have more questions about that, we can always set up, this would be a good opportunity, for students coming in with dietary needs to meet with me before school really starts rolling. So we can figure out a plan just like based on your individual needs.
Any other questions? Oh, well, we're glad that this is helpful. I'm gonna probably do maybe last call for questions. Feels like maybe the questions are dying down a little bit. But also keep in mind, you can always reach out to these individual departments. They're happy to follow up with you. If there's something specific that you'd like to chat with them about right now, or you'd like them to follow up with you right now, you can privately message me in the chat box and just include your contact information and who you'd like to have follow up with you. We're eager to help. We're here all summer. And we understand that, you might not have as many questions now, but maybe in a couple days or a couple weeks once you sort of process all of this information. So kind of last call for questions. So here's our contact information for housing and campus dining. Again, feel free to reach out or you can message me privately. Thank you again so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure, and I'm going to hand it over to Deb or Kristen for any final comments.
Just to echo Liz, thank you. And we recognize these were some great questions today. So it's clear that you all have looked at the website, you've watched the videos, you're ready to be Lakers, and that's exciting. But we know that questions pop up throughout the summer, so don't hesitate to ask. I think housing ends up getting a lot of questions related to like what to bring, what's allowed, what's not allowed, what furniture is in the units, as we get closer to move in. And if you can't find something on our website, don't hesitate to reach out via email. Most importantly, stay well, and I hope the sunshine returns to both Michigan and Indiana as soon as possible.
Yes, we need that sunshine. So we're going to probably just hang out for a few minutes. So feel free to, again, message me if you'd like anyone to follow up. Otherwise, have a fantastic rest of your day.